Coach Patty Gasso, welcome to Sports Spectrum. We're doing this in person here in Norman. This is really a treat to be able to talk to you in person.
Yeah, it's good to have you guys here.
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
We're excited to talk to you. Coming off of another national championship. And I think a great way to start is just an overall, the aspect of being at Oklahoma and this school and this program and just kind of where God has taken you to where you are today. What comes to mind?
Well, it takes me back to the decision to come out here 29 years ago, and I was pregnant with my son, who is now in his late 20s, with a wife and a son, and is this the right thing to do? And I always had aspirations of becoming a D1 coach, but wanting to live in California. My family's there, but knew that a JC coach would not be hired to be a D1 coach in California, so I knew it was going to take another trail to get there, and this job opened up, and we prayed about it, and we knew no one in Oklahoma. I mean, no one.
Yeah.
Came out pregnant and walked away with an offer, and we accepted it, and I thought I'd be here. My family would be here for maybe a few years, especially after the first couple of years. I thought we were going to head back, but the Lord led us here, and He kept us here for almost 30 years now.
And you couldn't have never dreamed of what has happened in that respect. I mean, what was a goal for Coach Gasso in 1995?
A goal was just to put together a competitive team, not even a winning team, not a team that would even maybe make postseason, just a competitive team. Start from ground zero and just build it up. That was the goal. But at that time, we're playing over at Reeves Park. We're playing at a public park, and there were a lot of things that had to change in order for that dream to just come true.
Do you remember your first game in 1995?
Yes, I do.
What memories come to
playing
mind?
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
This is a true story. The coach at Texas A&M was Bob Brock, very well-established national champion, and he met me at home plate, and he looked at the umpire, and the umpire looked at him. They were talking as if I wasn't standing at home plate. And then, true story, not a lie, Bob Brock looked at me and said, "Paula, good luck to you, Paula." And that's kind of began the fire that started who I am today.
Yeah.
That really kind of fired me up. I just felt very disrespected in that moment, and just learned that was kind of a common feeling that I would have for a while until we started being consistent winners.
What was a shift for you when you saw, because 2000 is 5 years later and you win your first title.
Yeah.
What took place in those 5 years where you saw a shift to being just a team that might be able to be competitive, like you said, to actually being not just a winning team, but a championship team?
Yeah, I think the ability to not be afraid to go after the best athletes. I mean, I'm calling Natasha Watley's one of the greatest players of all time. I'm calling athletes that I knew they were going to go to UCLA. I knew they would go to Arizona. But I'm calling, and I'm trying to get into their households. I'm going to make them say no to me. And I was very tough to say no to. And that was kind of my goal, is I'm going to make them uncomfortable to say no. So I just kept going after the top athletes in the country and always believing I might get one of them. All I needed to do was get one. But I do remember playing at the University of Arizona and them just ruling us over and over. It was my first year. We had to go there and play them probably about 7 times, and they just hammered us. And I remember looking at their players and thinking, I need women. Those are women. We're girls playing against women. How do I get women on this team? So it was ideas in my head of what I needed to do, and not get dejected if I kept getting no. Just keep going until one player says yes, and that one player's name was Lana Moran, a left-handed pitcher out of SoCal who changed our world.
And that was a shift that brought, because sometimes it really is just one pitcher, right? Like I think of Jenny Finch with Arizona and just how much one pitcher made a difference to a team going from here to here. Is that what took place with Oklahoma?
Pretty much, yeah. And it's just, I'm from SoCal, so I knew a lot of Southern California regions and players and started to really know the coaches. And Lana Moran has a good experience. She spreads the word to someone like a Lauren Chamberlain, who spreads the word to Kaylani Ricketts. And the word spreads as they all know each other. And that's really how the ball started to get rolling.
Faith has been a part of your life. You talked about praying even to come to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But there's such a culture of faith in this program. And I know it's intentional, but some of it is just God doing what he does, at least from the outside looking in. Because you're a coach and you have to be a coach still and coach these players to be great players. But there's a culture of faith. I want to go back to 95 to 2000 when you win your first title. What was it like then being a follower of Christ, a Christian, coaching and trying to build a culture of a winning team, but also not being shy about your faith? And then I want to talk about how that's evolved over the years.
Yeah. I might have been a little shy. I was very shy about my faith back then. My husband is not shy about his faith. And he was the leader back then in not being afraid to share. And I was really more of the coach. It's like, okay, we can't say that. Don't say that out loud. We're going to get in trouble. What's administration going to say? I was really uncomfortable. Although we were having Bible studies at my house, I wasn't leading them. It was like the pastor's wife that would come in, and it would start with maybe 2 players, and then it would go to 3, and then it would go to 5, and then it would go to 2. And then it would go to 6, so it was kind of bouncing around. But there was just that one moment, it's in the mid-2000s, that I had a player or two go to the administration and feel that I was taking sides with those who were coming into my house. And that hurt my heart more than anything that I could ever imagine. I was really, really upset. But it just took me back to like knowing that when you have new Christians and like you're sharing your faith, there's always going to be that Satan side that's saying, I am here. And that's when I met Sarah Roberts from the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, who jumped in and helped take over, because that way I could be kind of the middleman for her versus being that person that's standing alone. But I just remember I was knocked down, and Sarah Roberts was like, no, you don't. You get back up. We keep going.
Yeah, that's got to be interesting as a coach, because you want to, especially if you're a follower of Christ, the whole point is to be not ever forcing it on anybody, but vocal, and making disciples and the Great Commission and all of that. Yeah. And then you get kind of knocked down a little bit, and you're probably thinking, how do I still do this as a coach? And what was that time? You said Sarah came in and kind of rescued you. What was going on there with Sarah being able to kind of come in and yet allow you to still be a coach, but not be shy about your faith? Yeah,
I just needed exactly what you said, someone to pick me up off the ground, because I was ready to walk away. I'm like, if I can't do this, I can't be here.
Wow.
But because I'm living in middle America, I can do this. And I know there are a lot of other places that likely I couldn't.
Yeah.
So Sarah was saying, let me be that person for you. Let me work through you so that I have the freedom. And that took a little bit of time to get situated, because once that voice went to the administration, I just cut everything. But it changed my attitude about coaching, and it made me angry, and then it made me sad, and then it made me hurt, and then it made me want to say, you're not going to stop me. But it took me a time to get there, and that's where Sarah came. That was all orchestrated by God, finding me, me finding her, and getting this thing back on the right track.
How did you all meet? because she's been such an integral part of this program, and I know Sarah as well. We've had her on our show, and I see the DNA and from the spiritual side so much rubbed off of how Sarah pours into your staff and your players. How did you guys all meet?
I needed that person, and I didn't know where to go, and that's when I found the FCA. And then they said, we have someone. I mean, I reached out to them, and they connected me with Sarah, who's really kind of overseeing all of women's athletics and women coaches and wives of male coaches. And we hit it off right away. And I kind of shared my dream to her and ambition of how I want to go forward with this. Could she help me? And we just became great friends from that point on.
Patty Gasso is with us here on Sports Spectrum from Oklahoma. I'm looking at your wall here behind you, and you see 2000, you get that first national championship, and that's 13 years before you get that next one. What were those years like for you?
What I just talked to you about.
All that was taking place,
going on
right? Yeah.
during that time. I would say that we probably from 2005 to 2010, those were hard times for me. I really was not. When my kids were young, I'm trying to be a good coach, and I'm trying to be a good mom, and I wasn't doing well at either one. So I was really stressing out over winning. I got caught up in just the whole aspect of winning at all costs. You got to win. You're going to lose your job. I get home exhausted. I'd put my kids to bed, and they end up reading me a story because I would fall asleep before they would, always. And it was just, I was driving myself into the ground. And that probably around 2010, the Lord kind of woke me up and was like, you're doing this wrong. You're not here to win games. You're here to open the door, here to win souls. You open the door, let them in. I'll take over from there. And then everything changed.
Yeah, not just from winning souls, but winning championships, because I see 5 of them in the last 10 years.
Well, those championships are orchestrated by him as well, because I've got some very brave athletes who stand on the biggest platform and are not afraid to share their faith. And the Lord is like, right on, let's win you another one so you'll do it again. Because this is the best platform to speak, to preach from. And they're just sharing their hearts. And any athlete here has witnessed God's hand on this program. You can't deny it. You feel it. You see it. It's evident. And that's how you start grabbing these guys, and they become believers, and they're being baptized in hotel pools.
When
anywhere.
you see that, that's got to be amazing as a coach when you see that.
It's unbelievable. And the entire team is there, and there's just you feel God's presence, you feel their emotion, and it just leads to more believers. And so this team is the reason why they just capture hearts, because they're bold. When
you're recruiting, obviously you're recruiting the best players, but your faith is a gigantic part of your life. How often is faith brought up, whether it's by you, but certainly by the players and their parents? I wonder about that, because you're going in there and you're trying to sell them what you have, and maybe the program sells itself in some ways now, which is a great place to be, but the faith is so important in your life. Christ is so important in your life. What are those conversations like? Do they come up at all?
They do. Right? I think people know about our program, so I'm not afraid to share it. I tell them a little bit about who I am and my faith. And then we talk a little bit about the program, but you certainly do not have to be a Christian to be in this program.
Of course not.
That's not the parameters here. It's really actually the more non-Christians you bring in, the more opportunity you have to grow hearts and to Christ. So it's definitely brought up, and there are some players that definitely want to come here because of it, and their parents want them to come here because of it. You just don't find it in a public university.
But there's probably been moments in players, including those baptisms that you just described, that come in and they're thinking it's all softball And we talk a lot, we've talked to a lot of your players about the identity issue and getting caught up and wrapped up in what you do versus who you are. But I see this progression, and in some cases, this brand new person come out of this program that is a follower of Christ just by coming through the system. You mentioned it. You said part of your role as a coach is to see people come to Christ. Have you seen those moments happen way more than you thought you would over these years?
Without question.
Yeah.
And you've probably heard from some of the other athletes, but one of the greatest moments I've ever witnessed, there's been many, but this last year, our team is standing around the circle with their arms around Texas Longhorns.
Yeah.
And they're praying in the circle. UCLA and their coaches. Oklahoma State, all these teams that are supposed to be your biggest rivals, it takes one strong-willed lover of the Lord and Grace Lyons to say, hey, come join us. And maybe we just ruled you. And you're like, no, thank you. But they come. And I was waiting for that moment because we were on a win streak that took us to Texas. And I'm like, this is the day we're going to lose this game. Are we still going to reach out?
And they did.
They did. Absolutely. So they understand that this is more than a game. And that's why they play it so freely. That's how I feel. It's like this team, a couple of them made this comment that just stuck with me. And they share with each other, like, the end is already written. The end has already been written. So what are we afraid of? Why should we play scared? We already know that the results and the ending, the Lord already knows. He's already planned. So just use our gifts. Let's go. Let's go. Don't be afraid of the outcome. And it is so freeing when you watch them play. They're afraid of nothing. They're certainly not afraid to lose. And that's the beauty of this group.
There was a moment, and Sarah Roberts sent me the video when you guys had won. And I'll never forget where I was because I was at my daughter's high school state championship softball game in June. And Sarah sends me a text and she's like, look at what they're doing on the field after having just won the championship. And I'm watching the video and I couldn't really see it. She goes, no, put the sound up. I put the sound up and it's Nobody But Jesus by Casting Crowns. Not We Are the Champions.
No.
That had to blow your mind that these guys are on the field in this moment and they made sure that somehow that song gets played.
Yeah.
Somebody told somebody.
Well, my director of ops, Jackie Livingston, kind of referenced it upstairs, and our people upstairs were not afraid to play it. And as surprised as you were, I was as well, because I had no idea that was coming. But there was confetti everywhere, and just couldn't see very well. But I had a nice glimpse of watching them all together, just singing it from the top of their lungs. And that's something they sing before we get off the bus, every time we're on a bus ride.
How do you love someone and coach someone who isn't there yet as a follower of Christ? And yes, maybe they want to, because you said not every player you coach or recruit is a Christian. Not everybody's in the same place. Certainly not everybody's in the same place, even if they would say they're a Christian. But when you're doing that, you're getting a whole team revolved around that. There might be one or two that maybe say, I'll do it, but I'm not really there yet. How do you cultivate a place where that person is loved just as much as those that maybe do believe?
Yeah, I always reference that I invite everyone to come into chapel. You're welcome to. You don't have to. Everything is always prefaced by optional, the word optional. They are not treated any different. But I know if they're paying attention to what's going on, they start to feel what we're feeling. And it's not, no one has to say a word. They just watch the results. They watch what's going on around. They watch through the lens of other athletes. So they feel it without being told. I don't talk about it to them or, hey, what's taking you so long? Or I don't even bring it up. I really don't. It really is cultivated within our team and their circle. And I've got some very bold Christians here that will go to someone's house and just sit down and explain. There's just a lot of questions all the time, uncertainties, and a lot of questions, and they take it upon themselves to get those questions answered.
A couple more questions with Patty Gasso on Sports Spectrum. How excited are you about this 23 year? You've won back-to-back titles, but you got a lot of great players coming back. I'm just wondering from a coaching perspective, we're talking here, and it's at the end of 2022, but how excited are you about this new team that you have with a lot of returning faces?
I'm really looking forward to it because they are new. We have 8 new newcomers, 4 from the transfer portal and 4 freshmen. And that's almost half of our team. So there's a really new flavor. And to be honest, it started a little bit rough here as I was still exhausted. Our team was still exhausted. But it's September. It's time to get started. And I just felt a little bit of pushback from both sides, really. And so we went through some rough times, but relationships were important to them, so I made sure that I tried to spend more time with each one of them and really getting to know them. And we're rolling right now. I feel really good about going into the season. We're not talking about three-peat.
But it's there.
It's there, yes.
You can't walk
we know
around
it.
here and not see it.
No, I know. You're exactly right. But we know, I think we have that secret sauce that understands how to play and play freely without allowing expectations or, a lot of times they don't want to disappoint.
Sure.
And they're very concerned about what I'm thinking or what parents are thinking. And it's just really them understanding to play free. You don't owe anyone anything.
My last question for you.
Yep.
When outsiders come and they ask you, and I've seen it, my former employer, ESPN, and many others have said, why is your program different, Patty Gasso? When outsiders ask you that, because I can ask you that, and I think we can have a little more freer conversation because of what we're coming from with Sports Spectrum. But if an outsider, whether it's an ESPN or whether it's just an outside person or a coach, says, Patty, why is your program different? What do you tell them?
I have been doing it so long that I don't exactly know. It kind of runs itself. Before a player even comes in, they know what we're about. They know our expectations. We're blue collar, hardworking, humble, fearless. I try to empower them as young women and also bringing into the fold the faith base. I think a combination of all of those and just being true to who we are as a program. We don't, or at least I hope we don't, walk around flashing. I'm not on social media much at all, but we're not big flashers of rings and things like that. Maybe one time when we get them, and then I hope you don't see them again because we're not, here's how I would say it. Happiness is result-oriented. So you win that big trophy and you're all singing and the confetti's coming down and it's the happiest moment of your life. And then tomorrow, the confetti is on the ground, the lights are turned off, and what do you do now?
Right.
This is more about a program of fulfillment, and that is who are we becoming, the direction that we're going. How do we grow as women? How do we grow in our faith? And how do we find that path that we're supposed to take so when the lights do go off, my life is still working towards fulfillment versus that one shot of happiness that can leave you very unhappy soon after. So it's the long term. It's not the short term. It's just the long term of at the end of the season, maybe we win, maybe we don't, but we know we're learning and we're working towards finding out the woman that we're going to be, hopefully in Christ-like, and just a life of fulfillment and all these things you've learned here you take into your life.
Sounds like joy versus happiness.
Joy, whatever word. Why did you change my word?
You can use fulfillment.
Okay.
I was just
I'll
thinking
use joy. You use
I've heard people say joy in church a lot. You know, it's
Yes.
like happiness is fleeting, but joy is,
Yes,
is a deeper
100%.
meaning. And it sounds like that's what it is.
It's the same. Just to me, fulfillment is just a constant work in progress.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Coach Patty Gasso, we appreciate you. Congratulations on all the success. It's really neat to be here in Norman. It's exciting to think about what this place will look like in a couple of years too, as you get your new facility and your new stadium. But just continued success to you. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for watching today on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos. And if you want more stories on sports and faith, check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.